It's hard to remember that the Golden State Warriors in the 2014, 2015, they weren't the heavy favorites, right? They kind of went on to have this dynasty. They won 3 NBA championships in 4 years and made a lot of Blazer fans, including myself, really angry because they just dominated the West Coast, the Western Conference for such a long time. For that season, they were underdogs. They had a rookie coach, Steve Kerr. They had a very young team that hadn't proven themselves in the playoffs. I want to talk about 5 things that their rookie coach, Steve Kerr, brought to the team that helped them come together and dominate the Western Conference for such a long time. It's pretty incredible. The first, he developed trust. He started with trust. So coming into this season, the years past, they were plagued by turnovers. They turned the ball over a ton, which really prevented them from having success in the playoffs because the game slows down so much for those that follow the NBA. But he could have came in that year and really focused on, okay, we got to get our turnovers down. We got to take care of the ball better, but he didn't. Instead of coming in with that focus, he really focused on the relationships that he had with his players to develop trust, to build rapport, and make sure they knew that as a rookie coach, he was somebody they could count on. He was somebody that understood the game, and he was somebody that had their best interests in heart. These are all things as leaders we need to do. Effective leadership, it starts with that. First, developing the trust with yourself, but then also helping the team come together and trust each other. They also embrace feedback from all levels. So they did not have an approach of the best ideas come from Steve Kerr and everybody has to listen to him because he is the head coach. That wouldn't work. That wouldn't have been very effective. They really came with the mentality that regardless of who you were in the organization, regardless of who you were on the team, if you had an idea, you could bring it to the table and the best ideas would move forward. It wasn't about who the idea was from. It was about what was actually the best idea. And an example of that came in the finals. With the Warriors down 2-1, an assistant coach came to Steve Kerr and said, we might want to start Iguodala. That could change the tempo of the game and it can give us an advantage heading into these last potentially 4 games of the finals. But it didn't even go 4 games. After they started Iguodala in the finals, they won the next 3. So they went from being down 2-1 to winning the series 4-2. Iguodala went on to be the finals MVP, which is just incredible. But if Steve Kerr didn't have the humility to listen to his assistant coaches, this change wouldn't have got put into place and Warriors potentially end up losing that series. So they found the value in listening to ideas from everybody on the team. They also stayed committed to a process. They had to have buy-in from the team. They had to execute at a high level. And you can't choose. If you want to be an elite team, you can't choose days where you execute and days where you don't. You have to be consistent with the execution. So many great ideas die because they lack execution. The team lacks the discipline to execute at a high level. An example of this is with their star player, Steph Curry, right? An incredible player, one of the most exciting players in the game. And something he is so good at is improvising. So you just never really know what to expect with him, so it's hard to guard him. But at the same time, sometimes that type of play, it leads to a lot of turnovers, leads to steals. His teammates might not be expecting a pass, so it goes out of bounds. So they stay committed to each other, where Steve Kerr gave Steph Curry a lot of room to be exciting, to be the type of player that he knew would help them win a championship. And so they had that commitment to each other, where one, Steph Curry had the room to be himself, to be at his best. But also, Steph Curry gave Kerr the permission to, all right, pull me back in when it's time to make sure that as a team, we're playing to our potential. So it takes that commitment as well. The fourth thing, they held each other accountable. Steve Kerr is a coach that really likes to have fun. He made practices fun for everybody. When it came down for business, it came down to business and it was time to get focused. An example of this came early in the season. During halftime, they were down, they were losing. And the reason they were losing is because they kept turning the ball over. They couldn't control the ball. And Steve Kerr came in and laid the hammer down. He let him know this is not the type of team that we can be if we're going to win a championship, if we're going to be successful. And because he had taken that time to develop the trust, to develop the respect from everybody on the team, that conversation had an impact. Had that happen without the trust, had that happen without being a coach that was willing to listen to ideas, those sort of conversations have a much dampened impact. So because he took the initial steps to develop trust, when it came time for him to have that accountability conversation, his entire team was bought in. They made the change. They ended up coming back and winning the game because they had a coach that was not afraid to hold them accountable. So it started with the trust, developing the trust, but also stepped in to have that accountability conversation when it was time, which is a crucial element to creating an effective team. The last thing they did, and this is honestly the ultimate goal for any team that you're ever going to be a part of, is they put the team before the individual. This meant a lot of people on their team had to kind of take a step back adjust their approach, adjust their role to the team in order for the team to be at their best. They had two players, Andre Iguodala and David Lee, who were both starters. They had been all-stars previously in previous seasons, but at the beginning of this season, they both had to take a step back and play roles off the bench. So they weren't part of the starting lineup. They didn't have their name shouted at the beginning of the game. They had to take a step back and play different roles in the team. And if they had the mentality that I don't want to do this, I'm not going to be bought in, I'm not a starter anymore, and just kind of like held their heads down the entire season, there's no way their team would have been as successful as they were, because they needed both those players to step in and play crucial roles. They kept their heads high, they worked hard, they were great practice players, they were still bought into the team vision, even though they weren't put in the spotlight as much, and this allowed the team to perform at a much higher level. Iguodala went on to win the finals MVP, which is just an incredible feat, the first player that didn't start the entire season to actually win that award. David Lee played some huge minutes in the playoffs, but because they both were able to put their egos aside, they were able to help the team succeed more than anybody thought they would at the beginning of the year. And Steve Kerr really orchestrated a lot of this by being a coach that understood the fundamentals of how to put together an effective team. And so to recap, here are the 5 things that you need for your team to really run at a high level. It starts with the trust, right? You need to make sure that you have trust as a leader and the people on your team trust the intentions of each other. The second thing is you can't be afraid of conflict. You can't be afraid of people providing feedback. You need to be willing to listen to feedback at all levels. The third thing is you need to have commitment. You need to make sure that when people say they're gonna do something, they're getting it done. The fourth thing is accountability. When people say they're gonna do something and they don't get it done, as a leader, it's our responsibility to make sure that they're focused and they understand why this task is important to the team's goal. If a team lacks accountability, everything falls apart. And the fifth, and this is the ultimate goal for teams, is putting the team above the individual. If we have a team of people that are bought into the vision, that understand that we all succeed at a higher level, when the team succeeds at a higher level, you know you're in a good place and you've done your job as a leader. That is master level leadership right there. And if you're looking at your team as a leader, what I would challenge you is think about where are you and really start focusing on how do I take that next step.